Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm with Bob Vosseller, and we're discussing all things science fiction-y. Greetings, Bob. How are you?
Doing well, and hope you are as well. And always a pleasure to talk to you and uh, confer on the geek fandom world that we live in and the interesting things that are happening.
Yes, I love talking about that because it's today's mythology.
Okay, I
And
decided my backdrop would reflect that. So,
yes, it does. I love it. It's awesome. If I knew how to put backdrops on my computer, I would do it too. The last few times I tried to do it, even though it loaded pictures, it wouldn't let me. So
oh
one of these days I'll have that. Um, I was very disheartened to hear that Starfleet Academy had been canceled. I hadn't seen any of the episodes in full. I've seen bits and pieces of them on reviews, and I know that generally it was not liked, but I believe that if they'd given it a chance to find its voice, it would have done much better. Not all the Star Trek shows had their voice right away, including Next Generation. A lot of people
yeah.
complaining about that in the beginning, and they eventually found the voice and became a classic.
Yeah, I think it was a bad decision. I know that there were those that had some issues with it. Some fans called it, too youth oriented, which I mean, it's about Starfleet Academy. Of course,
Right.
it's going to be youth oriented. Some felt it was a little too different from prior series, which it was in a sense that it was exploring a whole other time frame than we're accustomed to. It was going beyond the Star Trek Discovery uh, time frame of the Federation, so it was rebuilding the Federation and Starfleet Academy. Um, and I think the decision to announce that it was being canceled while the show is still going on, and what I mean by that is that while season one had finished, um, it has another season to go next year. So why, especially during Star Trek's 60th anniversary year, when you're trying to keep everything upbeat and positive, why would you make this decision and almost throw cold water on an exciting, what is supposed to be an exciting year, a positive year? It seems like the powers that be at Paramount, Skydance, CBS, whatever you want to call them, um, you know, just shut themselves in the foot with that decision, and maybe the decision should have been made next year, and after seeing how the ratings were um, with the second season. So it's possible that it would have done more, better. Um, so cutting it loose, I know it's an expensive show to produce, but you know, cutting it at this point just seemed like, and announcing that they were cutting it at this point just seemed to play in. And I know there's probably political factors to it, corporate factors to it, but I do think it was a smack in the face to fans, and it wasn't a good decision. Um, I was still intrigued by the show. I watched the show. I thought it had, some potential further on, and I thought the at first I didn't want the Starfleet Academy to be set in that time frame. I wanted it to be set in just post Picard season three time,
Yes.
because that's the time frame that I'm most comfortable with at this point. But, they made that decision, and then I got on board to see, like, oh, 700 or 900 years apart from what we're used to, things are going to be different. And they were. I mean, we learned about, and I know you haven't watched all the episodes, but there's a dramatic, and not for spoiler, to save spoilers, but there's a dramatic, fate to the Klingon homeworld. There's a dramatic uh, change within the Beta Z government, or the Betazoids. having a uh, problem with their neighbor and pulling out of the Federation. All right, that's a spoiler, but it's not a big spoiler. And that was the basis for reintroducing them, and it was interesting. It was interesting to see that happen, and like things change. Obviously, things change within 900 years. Um, so this was a different federation than what we're used to. We're almost looking at I compared it to the TV series Andromeda, which was also a Gene Roddenberry creation,
Yes, I
um,
remember. Sure.
where they were their version of the Federation had to be restored after a long war, and that's what they were involved with. So, you know, kind of the same thing here. So I guess a lot of people just wanted the same thing, but do you really want the same thing after all these years? I mean, Star Trek is represents change. It represents growth. It represents social issues and stories that are more complex, that aren't always black and white. So
I have a hard time understanding what the word woke means exactly because what,
yeah,
what is the
I
alternative to be asleep or to be clueless? And why are those good things instead of bad things?
yeah, exactly. And it's like people are. I actually was on a post where someone is saying, "Well, you wouldn't say the same thing if you were a conservative Trek." I'm like, what are you talking about? There is no conservative Trek focus. Trek is Trek. Trek
Right.
has always, since day one, has been even to the pilot to an extent, was a social commentary in the cage. It was the
Right.
idea of freedom and the fact that an alien race was trying to imprison or impose their control because of their problem. Um, and Star Trek's always been that way. And so to suddenly say we've gone too socially, you know, I know there's times where if you hit people over the head with the social message, it resonates less than if you are more subtle and more creative in the way you present it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's more effective that way. And yeah, I've seen shows, outside of Star Trek that have maybe not set the right, like uh, sacrificed the core of the show for that. But I didn't really see that with Star Trek that much here. Um,
And
I
the,
I saw an interesting group of young people as well as an interesting group of older characters, um, especially the captain, played by Holly Hunter, and the Chancellor. I loved that character. I thought she was interesting, and she was our first alien captain as the lead of a Star Trek series. I mean, we had Kirk. We had Kirk, the young, dashing guy. We had Picard, the older, more mature, reasoned guy. We had Cisco, who came into leadership through tragedy of a space station. We had Janeway, who of course was the first female captain as lead. Um, we had Archer, which they played up the prequel aspect of it, and just forming the Federation and Starfleet, and then Michael Byrne in Discovery uh, had her own challenges, and she wasn't even captain right away. So I thought Holly Hunter was um, interesting, and there were fans that were so ticked off that she would crawl into her command chair. She's the captain. She's
and
allowed
not
to do
and
that.
not wear shoes. Yeah, that became a major.
Yeah. But her race, that was explained, that her homeworld, and one, she's several hundreds years old. I think she's like 400 and something years old. You're allowed to be like her race was described as kind of the space hippies of the galaxy. So, I thought it was charming myself, that part of it.
I had no issue with it. In
Yeah.
fact, if it hadn't been made into an issue, I probably would have just ignored it, and not been, I would have been oblivious to it.
Well, plus you saw that, I mean, and she is a tiny woman. You saw the command chair, it was a little larger than Kirk's, or and maybe they did that on purpose because maybe they knew they were going to do, that kind of scene. But I thought it was kind of, hey, whatever makes her comfortable. Um, as long as she's paying attention in a battle scene, which of course she would. I mean, this was like on an off time, um, a more casual time on the bridge, you know.
And the first Star Trek, the original series, they had people from different nationalities and races working together in the future where we've solved a lot of our problems. You had things like the first interracial kiss. You had all sorts of social commentaries you pointed out going on. And so Star Trek was quote unquote woke from the very beginning.
Yeah, and it moved forward towards other social issues, especially those that were getting more attention in the era that they were produced. I mean, Deep Space Nine, their first, you know, they had the first same-sex, kiss
Uh-huh.
between Dax and a woman, which within the context of the story, made perfect sense and didn't even get like too much, controversy um, at the time. And, Discovery had more of a same-sex relationship on a regular basis. And some people objected to that. Um, and yes, there was some of that in this series too. But I mean, really, it's 2026, people. You know, it's reflecting our life as well as the 30th century, 30th or 31st. I forgot what it is at this point, but I don't know. I don't know if we as fandom lot wise, what do we want at this point, for this where the for this what will satisfy the people of this franchise?
Well, it's not just this franchise too. I mean, people are hating on Supergirl.
And Supergirl hasn't even come out yet.
And it hasn't even come out yet, but people are hating on it. Everything about the choice to have Millie Alcock play a Supergirl, the depiction of Supergirl, even though it's based on something in the comics, so it's comic accurate, because that matters to some people. And what I've seen from the promos, it looks like a fun experience, and I'm looking forward to watching it as
Yeah,
a
I am too. I mean, I know it's going to be different from the first Supergirl movie, who was at that time, that Supergirl was more of an innocent, more of a, hey, this is Earth and I'm cousin Kal-El is Superman, and um, very similar to the TV series Supergirl, um, who was a little different. And this Supergirl, based on this graphic novel that was done and is the basis, um, she's going to be a little different. She's not going to be, like her cousin. She's not going to. She's a little bit of a rebel, but she's a teen. So I mean,
bit. And
weren't we all a little rebellious when we were a teenager? We weren't happy with much, but we like pushing the envelope, and I think, okay, she's pushing the envelope, and she just happens to have superpowers, and she's going to come across Lobo, which I'm excited about,
I'm
and I
excited about
think
this too.
the casting of Jason Momoa as Lobo is perfect. I always said that that's the role he should have had, not as Aquaman.
Aquaman. Well, the first Aquaman wasn't that bad, and it did very well in the theaters.
No, I liked Aquaman. I'm not criticizing him as Aquaman. I just thought, as the look goes, I just thought he was, there's there's certain actors that you look at and you're just like, oh man, this person would be perfect for, you know, like my wife and I watch, our guilty pleasure is watching the soap opera General Hospital, and there's an actor who's on the soap that when I first saw him, he was a recast. He wasn't the original Michael in this case. And I was thinking the first time I saw him is wow, he would make such a good Nightwing. He would make such a good adult night. He's too old to be Robin, but he'd be perfect as either Nightwing or which I know they did do Teen Titans and they did have a Nightwing, but this guy looks just like what I would think of Dick Grayson. Or down the line, I think this guy, you know, although he's American, would make a great James Bond, which they have yet to cast. But that's probably for a show at a different time. You know, we could talk about that.
Definitely, we have to do this more. I remember the because I like what James Gunn has done so far. We like the Creature Command.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
like
I enjoyed Superman. There's a few things that I would have tweaked, but overall, I think that Superman was a fun movie, and in the same vein as Fantastic Four was for Marvel. I thought back to back, because Superman came up in early July of last year, and Fantastic Four came, what, 2 weeks later or in August. Um, and those both had the correct tone for those characters, uh,
right.
of overall fun, the theme of justice, the theme of you know fighting the bad guy, and but also having some complex issues too of relationships and choices and things like that. It wasn't simply good versus evil either, but I think they had to set the correct tone. Um, Plus, in the case of Superman, it was great to see Green Lantern again on the big screen, even though it wasn't the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. It was the Guy Gardner Green Lantern, expertly played by Nathan Fillion, who was supposed to be Marvel's Wonder Man. Didn't get to do that, and but instead got to play the goofball Green Lantern. So
And they have Hal Jordan and John Stewart in the television series that's coming out. And there's supposed to be another lantern that was murdered or is missing or something like that. That's part of the plot for Lanterns. I'm looking forward to that as well.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait to see what they do, and it should be fun, and I can't wait for that to come out. I'm
Green
not
Lantern
sure.
has been off my radar for years. I never really got into Green Lantern, but I'm doing stuff with, again, mythology and theosophical mythology that has cosmic rays that they work with.
Hmm.
I ran into the storyline on Green Lantern where there's all these different color rings, and they call them parts of the emotional spectrum. So I'm sure they were inspired by the theosophical colors, just like the Infinity Gems were for Marvel. So I started reading to learn more about what DC did with them, and I got hooked into the Green Lantern saga.
I I remember first being introduced to Green Lantern in the early 70s, and it was not in the Green Lantern comic book. It was in a backup series, the Green Lantern Green Arrow series that Neil Adams did the artwork for, and Denny O'Neil did the writing for, which was critically acclaimed because it had brought social issues and decided to pair up those two superheroes, which really, despite their color, um, of their costumes and their names, they had not been put together, and they put these two characters together, the Green Arrow being um, a more a very liberal and kind of activist type
Mhm.
character, and Green Lantern being,
Yeah,
a cosmic policeman and being more rigid and having been in the military. They were basically traveling the country and facing all kinds of, different issues and, responding to them within their personalities, and it was fascinating. And that's, I could care less about the main Flash book. I was much more interested in the backup series, because what they did was, unfortunately, the series was, despite how much media attention it got, and how critically successful it wasn't selling enough for DC.
right.
They canceled the book, but they had to finish the storyline, and they had some extra, they had stories that they decided that were already drawn and made, and they threw them into the Flash, as a backup series. So yeah, they had several backup series to complete the storyline, and that's what I was more interested in. And then in the late 70s, they brought back the Green Lantern, Green Arrow book, and it was more heavily, emphasized with the sci-fi aspect of it. But it was still great to see Green Lantern and Green Arrow, um, playing off each other. It was sort of like a buddy, a cop buddy, kind of movie where one is the adult, one is the goofball, something like that. And I always related more to Green Arrow anyway, because I always like the archery part of it, and just his personality was kind of funny at the time. He always, had the jokes and the quips, no pun intended. But I mean, he really, he was just much more fun than Green Lantern. Um,
I
so
liked that series when it came out. I remember following it when it came out, and I should have, but I didn't get the collections of them. So I'm trying to remedy that. Um, but I enjoyed those a lot. I remember when Speedy was a heroin junkie.
yeah, like that was serious. Like,
Yeah,
his sidekick, you didn't, when you had teen sidekicks, like a few heroes did, you didn't just, you know, have them develop a drug problem. I mean, and that in itself was a serious situation, because the comics code, um came to play when Harry Osborn was, from Spider-Man, had a drug problem, and they went without the code in that series, of Spider-Man. I forgot if this was pre-code or what, but they did the storyline, and that was important. I think the point was, if this could happen to Roy Harper, Speedy, you know,
right.
Green Arrow's Robin, his sidekick, it could happen to anybody, and I think it was more powerful that way. So I really, it
Yeah,
was shocking.
nowadays they probably call them woke.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's that in comics too now too. Everybody's I'm really hating that word,
Me
because
too.
it's being used, or rather misused, um a lot. And it you have to tell stories that are meaningful. And
That's handled well in The Boys, I feel.
yes, yeah.
The Boys is not shy about the social commentary. And in a lot of the writing, they've been predictive, whereas they came up with extreme situations, and then these situations played out in our reality.
Hmm.
I'm really, I watched the first two episodes, and I'm looking forward to watching the other six.
Yeah, it harkens back to, I remember being in the theater and seeing The Watchmen, for the
Yeah,
first time, and never, being such a big comic book fan, and never expecting to see superheroes behaving in a less than superheroic way, and yet at the same time very human, and
right.
responding to that. And it was just a classic thing. And so I think it presented, and I think there's that we should be able to see more of that. We should be able to see maybe not to that extreme, but how difficult it must be to be a superhero, having to hide your secret identity, having to try to balance out a work life and a romantic life, and all these things. I think we need to, and there has been that to some extent, but I think we need to see more of that, of trying to maintain that balance, and what a pain it is, and relationships that don't go anywhere because the hero is too busy being the superhero and saving people
Yeah.
and breaking dates with their respective and for females as well. I mean, I always loved Spider-Woman for that reason, because the early Spider-Woman of the 19 70s, when she first came out, she had that pheromone problem where she was the pheromones were the opposite of what Alea had in Star Trek. She was um, causing fear in people. So for her ability to try to have a boyfriend who, when she was basically pushing them away with her pheromones, which she had no control over, I thought was kind of interesting to include as part of a comic book story, you know.
But we should have more comic book stories where we get the unpredictable, the unforeseen,
Hmm.
because otherwise it becomes formulaic, and then you know what's going to happen. What's the fun watching the movie or the television series or reading the comic book? What do you think about the Hulk and the Punisher being in Spider-Man?
I well, the Punisher was originally came out of Spider-Man. He was a
Yes,
So I thought that was about time. I was very happy to see that. I saw the trailer clip, and I thought that was cute the way they did it. And you know, he's an excellent Punisher. I thought that when I first saw The Walking Dead, and saw that actor there, and always and thought, man, he'd make a good Punisher. And who would have thought years later he would be? So, and he's driving the war wagon too.
yeah,
That's cool. So I'm happy to see that. I think it's going to be, like a cameo appearance kind of thing. But I think that will bring some humor and some unity to it. And from what I understand, he's seeking out help for a situation within this movie that he needs, and he can't go to Dr. Connors. So the next best thing is to go to somebody like Dr. Banner, who, I'm glad we're going to be seeing the Hulk, not just Dr. Banner Hulk, like,
right. He's
so
not
it's
going to be
it's
Savage Hulk. And
yeah, it's good to see the good old green skin, incredible Hulk, puny human version, the Hulk that we all grew up on. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And I, being a fan of the old Marvel team up comic book, it was always great whenever Spider-Man would team up with the Incredible Hulk.
right.
And while I don't know how much time he'll have in the movie, it will be good. It'll be good time. It'll be, time well spent, him, having to deal with the Hulk and vice versa.
And the Punisher's been in Daredevil, and
Hmm.
they're doing a special just on the Punisher. It'll be like a one-shot special. I'm glad they're starting to tie the stories together. I'm glad to see the Netflix Marvel Heroes back. And I just started watching season 2 of Daredevil. So far, it's a lot darker than the first season, and it seems to be moving in a particular direction. And there have been assurances on things I've seen on the computer that it's all going to tie together.
Now, is that on Hulu or Disney or both? Because I had a problem being able to find the first season on Disney. Um,
I've Disney. I believe we saw it on Disney, but I can't swear to that. It might have been on Hulu.
Okay. I and I know there's a whole sub thing you need for Hulu on Disney or that. So I'm gonna try it over the weekend to see if I can access that. I've seen a Daredevil folder there for, but it only had the Daredevil movies. It didn't have the Daredevil series. So I don't know.
I'm tired of
Maybe I need to upgrade my subscription or something.
streaming is great because you can watch things as many times as you like, and you can watch things whenever you want.
Hmm.
But it's really not good in very many ways, and it's not
Yeah,
either.
in some ways I miss the old, you know, a certain day was for a certain show,
Yeah,
and that's not to say that we can't do that now, but I guess with the fact that we have this freedom to watch things at any time or to even binge watch things, and I think that's what caused Emily and I to, we were almost religiously watching Star Trek's Starfleet Academy, if not Thursday, then by Friday, and then we extended it to the weekend. And then if our weekend got busy, it was like, oops, we missed it. We'll just have to do two episodes. And then we missed it again. And, like I don't know what it was, but you and I are both products of the good old network days,
yes,
where Friday nights belong to, Wonder Woman, The Incredible Hulk, Dukes of Hazzard, and
yes.
Alice, and Saturdays were Love Boat at 9 and on ABC, immediately followed by Fantasy Island, and so when we see them on a rerun network like MeTV and Fantasy, like we've actually gotten into the to locked into Love Boat at 5 o'clock on Sundays while we're doing dinner and finishing up the weekend, and Fantasy Island is 1 hour before, which I always thought that should be 6 o'clock. It should be traditionally afterwards, but you know, stuff like that. It's nostalgia, and
And
maybe that's one of our problems as fans. That
I believe that we should have physical media too. They're cutting back on the amount of physical media.
yeah,
I like collecting. I like
I
having
do too.
things
I
there
do
to
too. I mean,
watch.
I mean, maybe. Oh, I can't really show you because the backdrop is on, but I have on the side of me is my collection of DVDs. Like much like a library, and the other side is a rack for books, most of which I have not read, but I still like to have my Star Trek book collection over there.
Right,
And some of these movies, well, I can't say I've seen most of these movies, but I like having them there. I like the ability to just pop them in if I decide, oh, I haven't seen this for a while, or oh, there's a scene in here that I want to see all over again.
right.
To check my memory, to see if my recollection's correct, or you know things like that. I don't like the idea of everything having to be, I kind of miss with the new car, and I'm happy to have the new car that we got, and having for the first time a screen to see the back windows. I mean, I know most people have had that for a while, but I haven't. But the thing I miss is the CD player.
Yeah,
Because even though my legacy that's being decommissioned hasn't had the CD player actually working in the last 2 years, but it was there when I first got it, and I liked having CD player, in it, and um listening to music, and not only listening to the radio, and I haven't really used my CD collection as much, even though I have a CD player, but I always liked having it in the car, and that's a thing of the past now.
even on computers. Computers used to come with you could play movies or listen to music. And I tried putting a movie in like the disc drawer, and it wouldn't play. It said that it can't play it. And
Wow.
I talked to people and said, "Oh no, they're not putting those in the computers anymore. Those are
Yeah, well, laptops, yeah, they used to have, you know, things for discs and for CD, DVD players, and yeah, I missed that as well. I know there's a device you could adapt it to, or somehow attach it, but it's just not the same. It was,
no.
you know,
Now, I just started getting into Invincible
oh, what's
and
that like?
also
Oh,
the Umbrella Academy. And I like Invincible more than Umbrella Academy, but I like Umbrella Academy too. So those are interesting takes on superheroes as well.
I've heard that. I that is one thing that I have not really gotten into. I'm aware of it. I know, I think it's a young superhero. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I saw the animated preview, but I never got into that comic book.
His father is their equivalent of Superman, Omni-Man. And just like in Brightburn, he's not a good character, even though he appears to be good. So he's
Hmm.
part of like their Justice League or their Avengers. And at some point, he turns and he starts murdering other superheroes.
Oh, geez.
And then it turns out that his race, and they're from outer space, of course, the Veltromites. They go to a planet, become its champion, and then prepare it for the other Veltromites to come and take it over. And they're
Oh,
like
wow.
fascist. So it's a very interesting thing. And he has children here on Earth, and that's part of the criteria for judging a planet as suitable, where they could interbreed with the population and create offspring, because there's not that many real Veltromites left. So he has a kid, and then he gets another kid later on, and their eldest son is invincible.
Oh, wow.
He had to deal with the traitor's father, and then his father comes back, and he seems to have changed, and so it's soap opera at its finest with,
Huh.
with superheroes.
What company published that? That was that oh, I'm trying to think of the name is
I
the hmm.
I don't know. My wife read the comics for that, and she read the comics for boys. I didn't read the comics for either.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the boys until the series came out. I didn't realize that it was, you know, um, I mean, when I go to the comic book store to get, my comics, I always pick up those freebie um preview books for all the
Yeah,
companies.
me too.
IDW that has the rights to Star Trek, and ironically, I think they also have Doctor Who. They have a number of properties now,
Marvel's
and
not doing Star Trek anymore.
Marvel does not. No, it's been IDW for a while now,
Oh,
and they are, in fact, are doing a Star Trek Starfleet Academy comic book.
oh wow.
They're also doing a series called The Last Starship, which has something to do with the burn and it looked like alternate universe because they had Captain Kirk as we remember Captain Kirk from the original series, but with a modified uniform. So I'm thinking that that's a different,
An alternate universe.
yeah, I haven't picked up some of those. Marvel owns now because of their Disney affiliation, which owns Fox, has Alien and um, the Predator, which
And
is
they're mixing
interesting.
with the Marvel characters. I know that Spider-Man versus Predator, and they brought Godzilla back for some issues, so it's Godzilla versus the Avengers, and
Yeah, and also Marvel also owns, Ultraman, which should cross over with Godzilla because I believe he did, or a very similar kind of Godzilla creature in the original series of Ultraman. It's interesting to see who owns what these days.
right.
Flash Gordon was owned by Dynamite for a while, and they did their own version of the Defenders of the Earth called King's Watch, and they also had the Phantom,
Yes.
Mandrake the magician and his partner Lothar. Um, but now another company owns Flash Gordon and has been doing Flash Gordon comics, which I've been collecting, and their version, like an extension of the Defenders of the Universe, with a little bit more serious tone than the cartoon. Um, so that's been interesting too. Um,
Condor is back, and so's the Herculoids also.
yeah, and I thought DC owned them, but I think a different company now is putting
Yeah.
out the.
Yeah, I don't remember the company, but I know a different company's putting them out. It's a company that does a lot of license work.
It might be Dynamite.
Yeah, it might be Dynamite.
Yeah. It's
Maybe
hard to keep up
it's back.
with some of them. I'm forgetting now who. I think Dynamite still owns the Green Hornet because I read last fall the mini series of Green Hornet meets Miss Fury. Um,
Oh
which
wow,
Miss Fury is a fascinating character. She was actually the first female superhero heroine, predating
Superman.
costume superheroine, predating Wonder Woman,
Oh
and
wow,
looked like had Catwoman's costume before Catwoman, the one that we're more used to of the sleek black outfit, um way back. And she wasn't so much a comic book character. She was in the newspaper comic strip first, and was a very well, she was written and drawn by a woman, which was unheard of. And she, of course, disguised her credit so that it was ambivalent, that nobody knew that she was a woman, which was unfortunate. But back then, you had to do that, um, and was very, it was fascinating to see the evolution of that comic strip. But their version of woke was when the artist decided to put her in she wasn't always in her costume. She was a socialite, so she would be traveling around. And when they decided to put her in a bikini in the 19 she came out in the late 30s or early 40s, but they put her, I think it was in the late 40s. um and the comic, there was newspapers that would not run that comic strip, and it
oh wow.
damaged the strip. That they pulled the strip because she was going to be wearing a bikini. Now, you think of that, it's like ridiculous now.
It sounds like the reflection of the times then, where there were the nudie movies and women scantily clad in movies, and they had all sorts of codes that developed against
Yeah.
that might have been part of that issue, which was happening around the same time in the 40s, I believe.
Well, one of the things interesting about her is, as Miss Fury, she rescued a child from a burning building, and it later turns out, that that child was actually the offspring of her former fiance, because she had this romantic triangle between a police captain that she would work with as Miss Fury, but didn't know who she really was, and her former fiance. But her former fiance hooked up with basically a character who was similar to Wonder Woman's what's her name, von Gunther, Baroness von Gunther, kind of character. She was a Nazi, and but she was a Nazi who was uh, kind of a prisoner of the Nazis. And anyway, the child ended up being an orphan, and she wanted to adopt, as a socialite, and they covered that within the storyline, that she attempted to adopt her, and even somebody rich, if you were female and you're single, you just couldn't adopt a child back then. So that was an interesting social story too, that eventually she ended up being able to finally adopt this child, from over the years. So
We should,
interesting to throw into a comic book.
yeah, we should look at them more often. These
Yeah.
about comic books. We're approaching the end of our today's conversation.
Wow.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask your guidance. On and off, I've been trying to start like a Olympians chapter in Star Trek. At one point, I even joined your Starfleet organization. Uh, this is going back a decade or so when I was doing Mythic Atlantis, and that didn't quite go where I wanted it to go. Um, Fandom has changed and it's no longer what I knew it to be. And I'm not technically apt enough for some of the things that fandom is currently doing. So I was thinking of developing instead of a series of episodes, as was my original intent, then looking at Stargate and another one for Star Trek and another one for whatever else I wanted to focus on the Olympian mythology in that science fiction universe. I think what I'm going to do instead is just have a show that focuses on different mythologies and their
Hmm.
relation to Greek mythology. So, what do you think of that? And do you have any insights you could share or any information you could help me with?
I think that would be a lot of fun. I think that might draw a good number of fans because as Star Trek may have brought you and I together, but I mean, obviously, we're fans of so many other things.
Right.
Some of us into more, you know, things heavier than others, but we still enjoy them. We still like this sitting down and, reminiscing and talking about what we liked about those shows, what we wished they would have done to continue it, what they are doing in other media like novels and comic books and things like that. So I think that would be, some fascinating topics and would bring, some people in that would love to just sit down and have those conversations and to also vent about the changes that we're seeing. Like fandom is a living entity and yes, it is different. It is changing. And sometimes we are surprised by the changes that we see.
Yes.
So I'm all for it, and I would love to,
I,
join you on some of those sojourns into different subjects, just as we've done.
I did a first show on the Green Lantern Corps, the different rings, especially the blue ring,
Hmm.
as I'm working with the theosophical blue energy, the cosmic rays and things like that. So the blue ring is something new to the Green Lantern universe relatively. So I was looking at their interpretation of the blue cosmic ray, and we had a show on that, and it just touched on the subject. So I'm going to expand on that. Will you be interested in taking part in Green Lantern?
Yeah. I'll have to dig out from. I mean, I have the plastic. I have all the rings. You know,
Oh, are you awesome?
I got those years ago at one of the comic book stores, and I made it a point to like a pink one for the Star Sapphire, but
Yeah.
there's blue, there's red, there's orange, there's green, and I'm probably a yellow one there for Sinestro, but and the significance of those colors and what they stand for. So yeah, I would definitely be on board on that.
Okay, great. I'll definitely invite you to that one. Of course, you're already part of the Star Trek ones and the Stargate ones. So now I'll just make that one show instead of a bunch of related shows, and I think it'll move a lot smoother and a lot faster.
I think it would be great.
So in the few minutes that we have left, what words of wisdom would you like to leave fellow fans?
Oh, just keep on trekking, keep on enjoying what you like, and don't be afraid to try something new as well, and you know, life's too short to not take in as much as you can and have fun with it. And if there's something you really find doesn't appeal to you, well, at least you tried it out, you know. So
There's there's other
that's
options.
the only advice I'd give right now. We live in a very interesting time.
That, that we do, and part of what makes that time interesting. Um, how can people find you and connect with you and with Starfleet?
Well, I can be reached at beamaboard at AOL.com. Yeah, I still have that address, although I also use USS Challenger CO at gmail.com. I'd probably check that a little bit more these days. I can be found on Facebook under Bob Vosseller. I can be found on Facebook under USS Challenger. Um, and you could check out the world of Starfleet through sfi.org and USS Challenger .org is our web page, and of course region7.com has all the chapters of Starfleet. So, I keep myself busy within that realm, but I enjoy lots of other stuff too. So I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Bob. You're awesome, and continue to
You
be
are too.
awesome. And I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you for this one.
Take care. Have a great weekend.
You too, my friend.